Okay, good morning. We are getting into some really wonderful stuff now. Yesterday, we spoke about bhakti, and we're going to be continuing to speak about bhakti for some time now. Specifically, we spoke on one point yesterday, and that was we put a quote up by one popular speaker who he made a statement that love has no existential reality. Remember that? That's right. I will repeat. He said that love has no existential reality. Do you remember that? And then we shared a verse from the Vishnu Purana, one of the ancient Vedic texts, that said that actually it does. That when we say Satchit Ananda, or when we say Ananda, we're speaking about this potency referred to there in that text as the Hladini Shakti, the pleasure-giving power, and that this is one of the fundamental aspects of the Supreme, of God. In other words, eternally, existentially real, that love exists within God as an existential, eternal reality. And that because we are made of God's energy, we share this, just like the sun shine, it emanates from the sun, and it has the qualities of the sun, both light and heat. So similarly, because we emanate from the Supreme, we are the energy of the Supreme, that this love is actually our own nature as well. And it's something that lies dormant in the conditioned soul. And through the practices of bhakti, it can be awakened. Does that make sense? That was just a little summary of like what we spoke about yesterday. So that was just kind of our introduction to get into bhakti. Now we're speaking about bhakti within the context of speaking about 4 different paths of yoga. All are valid paths. All are paths that the Bhagavad Gita defines as paths that people practice to follow God within their own heart. Right? So they're all valid. But what was Krishna really recommending? Because at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, you know what? All these dharmas, all these different paths, you can just set them all aside. Sarva dharma prityaja. Really, prityaja is it's a stronger language than saying set them. It says like abandon them, get rid of them, right? So he's saying you can. They're all real. They're all valid. People that practice them are sincere yogis, but don't worry about them, Arjuna. Set them all aside and do one thing. And this one yogic act, this one yogic path, it encompasses everything else. Everything that you get in the others, you get in this. And it's simple. And it has advantages. Some of those advantages are that it's not dependent on your own power, but you receive the grace of the Supreme, that being. Was it last night was it here? No, it was last night. We're going into the 15th chapter of the Gita where it talks about the Purushottama. 15 chapters, all the Gita is so beautiful. The more you get into it, the more you just treasure it. The more it really becomes like the most important part of your life. And in this 15th chapter, Krishna says that, try to understand that behind everything, every wondrous, powerful thing that you see in this world, that I'm there. That when you see the light of the sun or the moon, that I'm in the sun, I'm in the moon. All these planets that are floating, I enter into them and I hold them up and I hold them in their orbits. He says that I'm in fire of digestion, right? He says I'm in the heart of every living being, and that from him comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. And then he says that by all of the Vedic texts, what is the subject that one is meant to understand? Because it can get confusing because it's so vast. But he says, by all the Vedas, I am to be known. It all leads to understanding me. He's saying that I am this Purushottama, this ultimate person, right? The person that all the other persons are supported by, or connected by, or vitalized by, are loved by. And then he says, and someone who knows me as the Purushottama, someone who knows me as the Supreme Person, he says they know everything. Right? In other words, all of the yogic knowledge is encompassed by knowing that Supreme Person from which it all comes. The Paramatma feature is known, the Brahman impersonal feature is known. When you know that person, you know everything. And then in the last verse of that chapter, he said, in that second to last verse, he says, one who knows me as the supreme person knows everything. And then he says this, he uses this phrase, and then sarva bhavena, with a heart full of bhava. You've heard this word bhava before, right? It means this feeling, but it also means like this loving feeling. It says with a heart full of bhava, with a heart full of love, then they worship me with all their hearts, right? They worship me with a heart full of love. And then he says, what is it again? Thank you. Iti guyatamam shastram, right? This is the greatest secret of all of the ancient spiritual texts, right? To know that there's a person behind it and that you can connect with that person in love. And that's what bhakti is. So all the other paths, the Bhagavad Gita has shown that all these other paths, their value is that they lead to bhakti. But he's saying, Arjuna, you can set them all aside and just enter into bhakti right now. And it's direct and easy and holistic. And you get a lot of help because he's personally involved. And so we can see on this chart here, you can see like in Ashtanga Yoga, what was the strategy for dealing with the mind in Ashtanga Yoga? Who can remember? Raise your hand. To still the mind, right? To hold it in one spot. And by stilling the mind, one can experience one's nature underneath and be released from all of their previous conditioning, released of false conceptions of the self, false conceptions of what I need to be happy and all of that. So in Ashtanga Yoga, what this chart is showing is that each of these four paths of yoga, they require internal renunciation, an internal letting go of the material motives, the material things of this world. Two of the paths, Ashtanga Yoga and Jnana Yoga, they cultivate that inner detachment through external detachment, right? By walking away from the world. And then two of the paths cultivate that internal renunciation, internal detachment by being active in this world, by not walking away. So they might look like a materialist. They have a job, they have a family, they're taking care of business, but they're doing it with the knowledge and the detachment of a true yogi. So in Ashtanga Yoga, you could still the mind, free yourself of all this conditioning, achieve a state of peace, and then slide on over into the bhakti area where now you take that peaceful mind and you bring Krishna into it. You bring Krishna into your mind and heart, and you practice bhakti with devotion. In Jnana Yoga, you're analyzing all of your material desires through this filter of knowledge, seeing them for what they are, understanding yourself for what you are, that I'm spirit, I'm beyond all this. One breaks all their material desires. And Krishna says, Jnanavan mam prapadyante. And then when you have that full jnana, then he says, then you slide on over to the bhakti. He says, then they surrender unto me. Jnanavan, one who has jnana, mam prapadyante, they surrender unto me. And then they go to the bhakti. You see this? Same with karma yoga, that you practice in this world, taking care of your important social responsibilities, but doing it not for something of my own, ultimately doing it because it's the right thing to do, and ultimately making it an offering to God. And gradually that karma yoga person, the more that it's focused on God, the more they also become freed of their material desires through this, and they can come to the point where they surrender, connect personally with God, and go up to bhakti. But in bhakti, and this is a really fascinating and interesting thing, in bhakti, the internal detachment that's needed for any of these yoga paths comes as a byproduct of love. That when you love God, you, without even trying, without walking off into the forest, living in a cave, practicing austerities, even going through like the mental process of analyzing all your desires, you can get full detachment without all of that, just because you become so attached through love to the spiritual side, to God. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? Raise your hand if that not entirely makes sense. We can do that. Don't be shy. Go ahead. Nobody? Okay. So then, just like in yes, question. Let's get the mic to you. One moment.
Thank you. Thank you. So regarding that part of Bhakti Yoga directly by the practice, renouncing everything, but we are speaking about loving the Lord.
Yes.
But if we don't have that love, how that renunciation comes through the process, if you can explain.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about next. We'll go into all the different practices of bhakti, how that love is cultivated or awakened within one. So yeah, we're almost there. Okay. All right. So then let's go ahead. And I also just want to mention, if you look at this carefully, there's one very important, it's not exactly spelled out here, but the idea here is that in bhakti, in Ashtanga Yoga, what are the limbs of Ashtanga Yoga? You got yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, et cetera, et cetera. These are means to an end. These are the means that you do in order to achieve this still and peaceful mind and go into samadhi and achieve kaivalya, achieve freedom from the influence of the material energy. Once you've achieved that goal, it's not that you're still doing pranayama. It's not that you're still doing asana. Do you understand? Those are means to get you somewhere. Right? It's not an eternity that you're doing pranayama. It was a means to get somewhere. Does that make sense? It's not to say that it's not a wonderful, brilliant, insightful practice, but it's not that anybody in their eternal perfection is doing breathing exercises. It was a means to kind of settle the mind to enter into another state of awareness. Once you've achieved that state, one no longer needs to do the practice. The same with Jnana Yoga and the analysis of all the material desires. That's not something that someone does in eternity. And in Karma Yoga, it's not that taking care of your social responsibilities is something that you do in eternity. These are all means to an end. Now, in Bhakti, it's different. The practices of Bhakti are both the means and the end. In other words, you practice now, here and now, your role in eternity. And it just matures until it goes from a practice to your actual spontaneous state of awareness. And so think about that when you think of all these four and how that makes this unique, right? It means you're going right to eternity, immediately, right into to the practices that you do. And now what I want to do is look at the practices. We earlier, some days ago, was asked, what's the difference between Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga? Do you all remember that when we spoke about that? And so we said that a karma yogi, they found a way through detached action that they're working in this world and not becoming bound. And that's a tremendous accomplishment. But they don't necessarily have the clarity of motive that the bhakti yogi has. The bhakti yogi has a goal in mind that the karma yogi may not have or may somewhat have, but hasn't fully developed their laser-like focus on it. But for the bhakti yogi, there's a laser-like focus. And what is that laser-like focus? What is their goal? Prema. They want to achieve Krishna prema. They want to achieve pure love of God. They know it's inside. They know it's somewhat asleep. And they want to awaken that. That's their goal. That's what they're aiming for. And there are practices that are designed specifically to awaken that. There are practices, we can call these practices, but they're also like emotional states or bhavas that one can engage in order to awaken that. And so in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 9 are mentioned. And so now why don't we switch to the next screen. These are, I don't know if I mentioned in this class. Sometimes it's getting hard for me. Do you remember if I was saying it in this class or saying it in the evening Q&A? But there's a really important passage, it's many chapters, practically a whole canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that speaks about the boy Prahlad, who was millennia ago born in a family of the asuras, of the demons, but he was a pure devotee. He was a pure devotee of Lord Vishnu. And he's being sent by his father as kind of like the ruler. He's as crooked and rotten as the rulers that we have today, if not worse. Very hostile. And he wanted his boy to be trained up in that same hostility. hostility towards the good people, hostility towards God, to Vishnu. But little Prahlad just couldn't understand that mentality. He couldn't even understand the mentality of enemies. He said, I've heard about this idea of seeing other people as enemies, and now I'm seeing it. It's very strange. I can't see the world that way. So he has a lot of very beautiful teachings there. And he was kind of being sent away to boarding school to be trained up in this materialistic, demoniac, aggressive, hostile type of mindset. But he just, it just, none of it sunk in. And when he would go home, then his father would call him up and sit him on his lap and tell me what you learned in school today. And he's waiting to hear, like, I hate Vishnu, I hate the Suras, they're our enemies, we will conquer them. Like, that's what he was hoping to hear. And then Prahlad said this verse. What's the most important thing you learned in school today? Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing and chanting about Lord Vishnu. Right? Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanavedanam. He lists these 9 different, I'm calling them here defining expressions of bhakti. These activities or these expressions, they are inherently of the nature of bhakti. Other things that we do in life can be, sometimes we use the word dovetailed, they can be connected with bhakti. Like your job, it may not be inherently related to bhakti, but it can be done in the consciousness of bhakti, and one can cultivate bhakti through it if one understands it correctly. But these 9 expressions are different than that. By nature, they're designed as expressions of bhakti. And shall we discuss them? Yes. These are the practices that define the bhakti yogi. When I know in the Western world, some of these terms, they get watered down, right? Karma yoga may mean cleaning the yoga studio so that you get some free yoga classes or something like that. No, this is like a really deep subject. This is like important philosophical, yogic concepts, so we should try to really understand them. Bhakti is the same way. When a lot of times I meet people that have heard about it, and they have a picture in their mind of, sitting around the campfire, strumming the acoustic guitar, singing a song together, that kind of thing. And not that there's anything at all wrong with that. And it could be bhakti, but it's not just a sentimental feel-good thing. This is the deepest philosophers, the most powerful yogis practice this. There's libraries of dense philosophy on how to understand bhakti, how to understand the nature of God, how to understand the nature of the soul, how to understand the nature of this world, how to practice this, how to go into the deeper levels of the subtle mind, understand the heart. It's a wealth of literature and philosophies. It's serious stuff. And so I don't know. I guess I'm just saying now I'm saying these are the activities that define the practices of the bhakti yogi. These are well designed to have a powerful therapeutic effect on the subtle mind, right? Great sages have illustrated how to carry out these practices and how to understand them, sharing from us from the depth of their experience, of their yogic experience. And if one can learn how to follow it and follow right in the footsteps and achieve these states of awareness, achieve these states of ultimately divine love. So are we ready to hear about them? I don't know if we'll have time to talk about them all, but we'll go through them step by step today or following days if we need to. Questions before we go into this? Everybody feeling good? Yes. On the same page? Yes. Let me hear you if you're feeling good. Yes. Say something out loud. Yes. Okay. Very good. All right. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. This is hearing and chanting about Krishna. Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanavedanam. Shravanam means hearing. Specifically, it means hearing these. Well, I honestly, what I'll do is why don't we go through them one at a time? Here we go, Shravanam. You want to blow that up a little bit? Thank you. Shravanam means hearing. Hearing about Krishna, his names, form, qualities, pastimes, and his teachings from authentic sources. That means especially this Bhagavad Gita, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, this 18,000 verse masterpiece of devotional yoga. And many other books are there too. But it means that one's hearing these, reading them themselves, and hearing them elucidated by people with deep realizations on them. This is Shravanam. This is yoga. This is a serious practice. It is the doorway into bhakti because through hearing, the heart begins to be purified and awakened. What's the verse in Srimad Bhagavatam? Shrinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantasto hibadrani virunoti suhrit satam. Krishna is the friend of every living being, and he's in their heart. This is what this verse is saying. And when someone begins to hear about him through reading these texts from within, it's said that the hearing, what is it, is punya shravana kirtana. It's actually already, just hearing it is already like a thoroughly purifying, holy, sacred act. And by doing it, Krishna in the heart begins to purify the heart. When he sees this is what you want, he begins to, when we say purify the heart, again, it means that all of that misconception of who we think we are and what we think we need begins to fade. Right? As we hear these texts, everything becomes clarified. And note, he's saying something that he's not saying for other yogis. He doesn't say, like, when you walk away from the world and go into the cave and practice Ashtanga yoga, I, within the heart, start to purify them. It's kind of like you're on your own. It's kind of like it's going to take your own strength, your own determination, your own power of self-control, extreme self-discipline. Go out, go for it. See if you can achieve it. Here, Krishna's saying, I'm immediately there to help. I'm right on it. As soon as I see someone turning this way, I'm on their team. Right? So that's Shravana, this hearing. This, if one is a serious bhakti yogi, they're doing this not just occasionally, but they're doing this daily, right? I want to be clear. It's said in these sacred texts that any one of these 9 practices is enough to deliver one, is enough to release one from the material conditioning and establish them in the state of bhakti, in the state of awareness of divine love or of prema. Any one of them can do that. But generally we'll see that these will be, that especially these first 2, hearing and chanting, that these are the standard practices of the bhakti yogi. And if one is if they're not just saying it sentimentally, but if one is a serious practitioner, they're doing both of these on a daily basis, right? How many of you practice asana? Please raise your hand. Okay, most people. And you know that if you practice asana occasionally, off and on, you do it a lot for one day and then you skip a few days, and it won't work that way, right? It really takes a steadiness in the practice, a daily practice, and then you advance. And so bhakti yoga is like that too. You know, one practice is a daily hearing. It means every day I read Bhagavad Gita. You know, so I know a lot of yogis that say, I read 1 chapter of Bhagavad Gita a day, right? Read just the verses. It doesn't take very long. Sometimes it takes 10 minutes, 20 minutes, right? You read a whole chapter. I'll guarantee you, if you read a chapter of Bhagavad Gita every day, do that for an entire year, right? How many times will you read the Bhagavad Gita? 18 chapters, 365 divided by 18. Anyone? Good math people? Someone on it? You'll read the Bhagavad Gita quite a few times in a year. 20 times? No. I don't think so. Maybe?
Yeah, 20.
20. Oh, very good. Forgive me. Yeah, 20 times. You read that Bhagavad Gita 20 times in a year, you'll begin to see the world through the Bhagavad Gita. It will change your life. It'll be powerfully purifying, you know? So steady hearing like this. This is an important practice in Bhakti Yoga. Okay, Shravanam. Any questions about Shravanam? Anybody want to do it?
Yes.
Anybody think, maybe I ought to do that every day? Anybody want to? Think about it. Yes? Yeah. Okay, Shravanam, Kirtanam, chanting or glorifying. Kirti literally means like glory. So when we say kirtan, it means to glorify. And so here and generally when people say they're thinking of the music, right? The kirtan. It means that. It also means more than that. It means speaking, chanting, singing, or glorifying the Lord. So that means even like, talks, on Krishna's pastimes and so on. That's kirtan, right? And especially in this age that we live in, this Sankirtan, this when a group of people get together and they sing the names of God, that this is particularly the Yuga Dharma, the Dharma for this age. So Kirtanam, chanting these names, one is what you're taking in through the ears, and the other is what you're putting out through your voice, right? Hearing and chanting. So both of these are done on a daily basis by the bhakti yogis generally, right? Most bhakti yogis have taken a vow that they're chanting the Maha Mantra on their malas, on their beads. Many of the people when they commit to this path, they take a vow. 16 times they'll chant around the beads. It's about 2 hours worth of meditation like that, chanting, right? So hearing and chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam. These two this is like the bread and butter, right? This is like the real solid, general standard practices of the Bhakti Yogi. Good?
Yes.
Okay. Next one, Shravanam, Kirtanam. And this next one, Smaranam. Remembering or meditating. Where you bring your mind, you've heard and you've chanted, right? Remembering the Lord through sustained meditation on his name, form, qualities, and pastimes. What you've been hearing in these texts, now you begin to take your mind into them in a deep way. Deepening from deliberate remembrance, like maybe as I go through the day, I think of God, I think of Krishna, I think of these pastimes. And that deepens into focused meditation or dhyana, and eventually into uninterrupted absorption. Sometimes this term is used, dhruv anusmriti. It means, anu means to follow or to be continuous. Smriti is more or less the same word as smarna, to remember or to meditate. So you go into a deep, continuous meditation. This is something that powerful yogis can do, right? That your mind goes very, very deep. They say it's like the example that the sages say is it's like pouring oil. You pour oil, it's like that. You get a thick flow, right? Like if you pour, like let's say we had an object here and you poured water on it from a distance, it kind of splashes everywhere. But if you pour oil, it just goes down and just encompasses and fully covers and encompasses and sticks. So like this, our mind, it sticks, in thought of God, full, deep absorption, smarna. This smarna is not easy. It requires more of a qualification, right? Because most of our minds are very disturbed and distracted. But as one advances in bhakti, it becomes easier and easier to go into this smarna meditation like this. A question, if anyone has questions at any time, please feel free to raise your hands. Yes? Over there.
Sorry. Is this on? So I have a question, which is that I see a lot of bhakti yogis like wearing headphones, for example. And
Headphones, okay.
Yeah, like headphones. And I know that in the headphones there's like chanting going on, or there's like a lecture.
Let us hope.
Yes, that's what I'm assuming. And I just get curious sometimes because I know that like now, we have that technology, but I sometimes wonder if that's like a cheat instead of trying to actually train our own minds to be doing that consistently. Does that actually take away from our ability to come into Smaranam, or does it actually help?
Well, I think that's the hearing. That's the shravana, right? So whether we're hearing a lecture or some talk or some elucidation, maybe we're hearing stotras, or poetry, about God and so, about Krishna. So I think it's helpful for smarna. It actually makes it possible. Those headphones pretty good. Like it's a way, no matter where you are, you can just kind of turn on the right channel, turn on the helpful channel, control. It's a direct way of controlling the senses, because you just, to some degree, we can choose what we look at, but it's harder to choose what we hear. Right? It just comes in, and so headphones can actually be, really helpful like that. There's a huge disadvantage that we live in, this world of technology, this world of social media, this world of 24-hour news cycles. It's sometimes I've heard it described as weapons of mass distraction, right? And that's the state. And so what's happening, and I think we all know about this, our attention spans have become very small. And we tend to be caught up in things that aren't so important. Sometimes, have you ever had this experience where you're on Instagram or something like that, and you're scrolling, you're watching one thing after another, and after a while you realize I've been doing this for a while, and then you also realize that every single thing coming up is like inane, is just like silly and absurd and ridiculous and not worthy of my attention at all. And somehow I'm stuck doing it, so it's a huge disadvantage. But if we're smart, we can see that there's an advantage in it too. That even when I began practicing bhakti yoga, there was no internet. Boy, I'm getting old, huh? There was no internet, what to speak of YouTube or these things. If you wanted to hear someone speak on bhakti, for the most part, you had to do it in person. And there are only so many people that really were capable of speaking well on it. So it made you really appreciate it when someone came through your town and had something valuable to share. And there were also cassette recordings then. So you could collect these cassette recordings, but they were harder to get around, and they would fall apart before too long. But that was a big thing. You have your cassettes, or you share your cassettes with people. Nowadays, just with the thing that you're walking around in your pocket all day, there's so much incredibly good information on here. So if you know where to look, you can really benefit from it. So we have to take the disadvantages and turn them into advantages. And carrying around some headphones and listening to good recordings is a great way to do it. If you take something like the Brahma Samhita, right? Like this is Vedic verses, ancient texts that glorify Shri Krishna. They're beautiful, beautiful poetry. Chintamani pakara sadma sukalpa vriksha laksha vriteshu surabhira vipadayantam Lakshmi sahasra satasabrahma sevyamanam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. If while you're driving in the car or waiting in line at the supermarket, or a lot of people have jobs where they can actually listen to other things, if you can listen to that, hear the translations, this is a huge advantage, huge advantage. So yeah, it can work against us, but it can work for us. And the more that we hear, then that smarna becomes easier, because it's kind of just like, if you have a glass full of ink and you pour milk in it, eventually, well, I don't know which one's heavier, but like one's pushing the other one out, right? And maybe the ink's heavier. Either, let's say the milk's heavier. You pour in the milk, and the black is kind of getting pushed down, and then it's coming out, and you keep pouring in enough. There's no ink left, and it's all milk. And similarly, if we keep hearing enough, more and more, eventually all the other stuff kind of gets pushed out. And what's left is we have a mind that's fresh with this really valuable content. This is so important, just what we consume. Again, when I was a kid, we didn't know so much, people didn't know so much about nutrition and all of that. Right? We'd eat, to this day, people really don't. I go into a grocery store in the United States, the grocery stores are huge, right? It's like absurd how big they are. And there's just aisle and aisle and aisle of all this stuff. None of it's worth eating, right? All this processed food and nowadays some people know that this stuff's not, it's just not good for your body when you could just go and have something fresh and healthy and delicious, but just for some kind of idea of convenience, we're eating this, this garbage. Well, what are we putting into our mind, through what we hear? It becomes essential. What do we hear? What do we read? Is it worth it for me to have a Netflix subscription? Am I really getting this money that I'm paying? I'm working hard to earn this money and paying to get this subscription. Is it really worth it? I'm not saying, I'm not judging it. I'm not saying that it couldn't be. I'm not saying some people might not use it wisely. But I think for the most part, we don't. I think for the most part, we take our valuable time and we veg out, right? Because we don't have the determination, or let's say the convenience. What if in my neighborhood, I walked outside my front door and there was like kind of a little gardenous kind of park area there. And every evening the locals just got together and had kirtan and told stories from Mahabharata. Sure, if that was there, I would do it, right? That would be so nice. But it's not like that. Our lives are far more complicated. We all work far away from where we live. We spend these hours, going to work, working, coming back. We're tired at the end of the day. We're not about to jump on a subway or jump in our car and drive somewhere else to go to some other program. It's not so convenient. And then we just, in our weakness, we just say, oh, let me just flip this thing on. And we just let our mind rot away. We let the time slip away, right? The yogi can't be like that. Yogi's got to have some strong determination, Yogi's got to say, okay, I need to use this time wisely. And if that's where we got to make a change. It's going to take that kind of determination. These things that we read about, these states of awareness that seem so beautiful and all that, we can be a good person and be kind of like an armchair yogi philosopher. We might learn the Yoga Sutras and we might be able to talk about it in conversations, but are we going to transform? Is it something that we just talk about, or is it something that becomes really a transformational part of our life? If it is, we're going to have to start worrying about not even worrying, we're going to have to be determined about what we consume. And that means consume with our mouth, consume with our eyes, consume with our ears, what we take in. What we take into the mind will make it either much easier or much more difficult to gain control of the mind, as yogis are meant to do. Okay? So headphones, make good use of them.
Also, the Vedic.
1 second, Faru.
In the
So, there you go.
in the Vedic culture, the Vedas originally, when we had no written books,
Yeah.
it was always Shruti and Smriti.
Yes.
And also, especially the Jnana Kand of the Vedas, the Upanishads, it's always meant to be heard from a revered master, like who's sitting up. And so, I think that's a great part of a big part of our culture.
It's the foundation of it. That's right. Yeah.
I also doubt the earphone stuff, but this then made sense to me.
It can be a good thing. And you also had something to share, Amy?
I did. So, just to share, I have a traditional job in an office.
Okay.
And I always have one earbud in.
Let's put the hair over it.
And I'm listening to Kastuba.
Okay.
I'm listening to Kirtan. And for me, it helps me not listen to idle gossip, chatter. So for 8 hours, instead of having the mindless noise, I'm listening to. Correct. So
There you go.
to that, yeah, it helps me.
What happens when your boss comes along and starts talking to you while you still have? I'm playing in your ear over
Right.
here.
I have to very discreetly hit pause on my phone.
Very good.
And if I ever get called out, I say I'm listening to like spiritual music, or I can say that.
Yeah, sure.
You know, that's
Very
not
good.
bad.
Yeah, no, it's very good. Okay. Your boss appreciates, actually, you're one of the best workers there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Because I bring in money.
You told me the story. Okay. All right. Smaranam. And then, next one, Padasevanam. This one's a little, I think the earlier ones are just like kind of really clear to understand them externally. Padasevanam literally means serving the feet. Pada means the feet. Sevanam, service done to the feet. But what does this really mean? How does it play out in the practice of bhakti? It looks something like this. Serving the Lord's lotus feet through acts of devotion connected to him, such as visiting and serving temples and holy places, circumambulating them, bathing in sacred rivers, and serving his devotees in sacred items like the tulsi plant. Oh, there's this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. What is it? Is it in Bhagavatam? Tadiyanam samarchanam. Oh. Aradhananam sarvesham. This is Lord Shiva speaking to Parvati. Aradhananam sarvesham. Of all the different types of worship, Aradhananam sarvesham, Vishnu aradhanam param. Worship of Vishnu is the supreme, right? It's the best type of worship. Tasmat parataram Devi. But oh, my dear Devi, Tasmat parataram Devi tadiyanam samarchanam. That worshiping that which is connected to Vishnu is still even better. This is something that's there in bhakti. It's that better than being the servant of God is to be the servant of God, right? It's actually still more appreciated. And so here the idea is that certain things are sacred because of their connection to God. And by connecting to them, you're connecting to God in a very powerful way. So the sacred river is connected to God. If you bathe in that sacred river, then you're serving God by serving the river. You've all seen the tulsi plant? This tulsi plant, you see it all over these holy places in India. It's considered a very sacred tree. It has a very deep connection with Vishnu or with Krishna. A lot of people, they keep one plant in their home. They water it every day. You can water that plant. You can circumambulate. There's a whole song you can sing. Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha. It's actually a deeply esoteric song of bhakti. It's a prayer, So that and really essential in bhakti, serving Krishna's devotees. This is, in one sense, there's no sure way to please God or to advance. These are serious practices. I have one friend. He and we lived together as monks. I had a desire in my heart, and he had a desire in his heart. Different desires. Krishna fulfilled both our desires. Right? I had a desire in my heart that I want to serve in New York City, in my home. I want to somehow, where I grew up, I want to somehow bring bhakti to that place. And somehow it was all arranged, and that's what I do today. And he had a desire in his heart. I want to live in this holy place, Sridham Mayapur, this beautiful place on the bank of the Ganges River in Bengal, the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya, the real home of Kirtan. He said, I want to live there someday. And Krishna fulfilled his desire. And he lives there today. And he does many different kinds of services, but I would say the most essential thing he does in that community is he just serves the devotees there. If they need to get a new apartment, if they need to find a house, if they need medical care, if they have somebody that's visiting that needs some kind of accommodation, if they need to arrange a ride to get to the airport, he's just there. He doesn't get paid for it. Every day, he invites people over to his home for lunch. That's just, he wants to serve people. That's just become his method of practicing bhakti. And it's a very powerful method. So that's considered padasevanam. That's considered, we see the paintings of Lord Vishnu, and Lakshmi Devi is massaging his feet, right? It's a very kind of personal connection. So it's said when you connect with that which is connected to God, it's like you're connecting to God's feet, and in a very beautiful way of softening the heart, of connecting to God. Does that make sense? Okay. Is your, maybe for some of you, your idea of what bhakti is kind of broadening or filling out in some way? Raise your hand if it feels a little bit like that. Okay, good. Padasevanam. We're almost out of time. Yeah. We only have a couple minutes left. Any final thoughts about today's talk? We doing okay? Is it not? Yes. Of course.
Thank you. So I'm interested to hear a little bit more of your knowledge and wisdom around the feet in the culture of Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma or Bhakti. I had an experience when I first came here of meeting a Swami and I'd never touched a Swami or someone's feet before, and I had this overwhelming urge that I needed to touch his feet, and it was quite a powerful experience. So I'm interested if you could share a little bit about the feet.
Yeah, because I only have about a minute right now, I could say something very brief, or will you be here tomorrow?
I'll come later or tomorrow.
Will you be here tomorrow?
I'll be on time, yes.
Okay.
Or tonight.
Okay,
Or tonight, yeah.
why don't we do that? It would be nice to discuss that a little bit. So why don't we come back and tomorrow we'll go into that question a little bit more, because we're pretty much out of time. All right, thank you. We're about to launch into, I'm going to go through these 9, and then I'm going to really launch into something that I think will be very exciting. This will be a background for it. But I mentioned this idea, the greatest secret, the confidential knowledge of the Vedic texts. I really want to go into depth into that. I really want to show there's a whole nother side to Vedanta, and spell it out, how it all plays out. And so I think these will be really, I'm hopeful that these will be valuable for you in the coming days. So I think tomorrow we'll go through the rest of these 9, maybe get that other subject started. And then from here on out, we're going to be really into that confidential side, understanding the depth of bhakti, what it is, what it isn't, how it's understood in all the different spiritual traditions in the world, how it all comes down and is churned through a variety of Vedic literature, what it reveals about how God manifests in all different kind of ways, and then how bhakti, all the different levels of bhakti and how it can mature in one, and so on. So there's so much to talk about. So we're getting into really interesting stuff today. I felt maybe today was a little bit didactic or something, I'm not sure. But I'm hopeful that it's just kind of clarifying, okay, now I'm beginning to understand what bhakti is. I might have had some idea, but it's getting clear how that's really yoga, how that is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing their own true nature. And ultimately that own true nature is divine love. All right? Thank you all so much. So nice to spend this time with you. We'll see you tomorrow. Please stick around for the Kirtan. If you'd like to get more of these talks, please speak to Gabriella out front. She'll hook you up. Hari Om Tat Sat.